Howdy. I get asked a lot about grass. I'm sort of the turf guy. And when I say turf, I'm talking about turf grass, the real stuff, not that fake stuff that so many of us who used to play on it hate. But yeah, turf grass, good, bad. As the turf guy, you might be surprised that I actually have the least amount of grass of about anybody in my neighborhood. I think I have a pretty good handle on why we need grass in some spaces. Maybe in other places we could reduce the amount of grass that we have. There's no doubt there are some detriments to grass. It tends to be high in water use and need. We have to put fertilizer on it. It has to be mowed, and all these things can create some pollution in the environment, and we have to kind of factor that in. But do we want to get rid of it completely? Do we want to get rid of plants in the urban environment? I don't know about you, but I do not want to live in a concrete jungle. There are definitely reasons why we want grass and why we want plants in the urban landscape. So let me share my screen here with you. All right. So we look at grass. So here's a golf course, and again, so some people are going to look at that in a desert and say, how can you justify using this water, especially these water features, but also water used to water this grass so we can go out and play golf? Well, if you're a golfer, you might argue with them. There's some reasons why golf's a good thing in terms of health and other massive $100 billion industry, actually. So yeah, it's not as easy as maybe we might think. We also need to keep things in perspective. We use far more water in agriculture to create our food, fuel, and fiber than we do in the urban landscape. But that doesn't give us just license to go out and waste water. So we need to have a legitimate conversation about whether or not we have plants in the urban environment or not. And specifically, mostly grass is what I'm talking about because I'm the grass guy. All right, so it's a crop. It's actually considered to be a crop by USDA. It's grown as seed and sod. And so we have farmers that actually grow this. But, turf grass is actually the #1 irrigated crop in the United States. You might be surprised to know that. A lot of acres of irrigated grass. Now, it's not the #1 crop overall. There's a whole lot of crop out there that's not irrigated. So #1 crop that's grown in the United States is actually corn, but irrigated, #1, turf grass. Aesthetics, nobody can deny that grass can really make a property look nice, and property values are one of the things that we list as a reason for why we'd want to continue to use grass. Recreation, it's important. Being able to go out and play soccer and those things, our kids, and it's good to have grass to do these kinds of things and go golf. Functionality, sometimes it just makes sense. Again, I have a small amount of grass on my landscape. I like to be able to have a space where my grandkids could go out and play around the trampoline, conducive to being able to walk from the front lawn to the back lawn. But I've actually reduced the amount of grass that I have to try to be just what I need to be functional. Athletics is important. It's a big part of what I do in my life is consult with sports teams. And it's important to have good grass to be able to play these sports. And again, some people would shame these things, but I can tell you as a former high school football coach, there's these boys that I worked with, it was good for them to be doing that. My own sons, I noticed that when they were in sports, they were in less trouble. They gave them some good things to learn. And so sports can be overdone for sure, but it can be a good thing for us. And so for a lot of reasons. Anyway, those are just some reasons. I've actually got a long list here, things I pulled out of the literature. Scientifically, most of these things have been proven in terms of all these things that provide benefits. Grass provides benefits to us, either socially or environmentally. I'm just going to walk through the list. Let's start here on the left with things that we increase or improve. Xenobiotic degradation, that's chemicals. These ecosystems can help break down these chemicals. Like in artificial grass, they don't break down as well. But the soil grass system is really good at having microbes break down these chemicals. Mental, spiritual health. Yes, believe it or not, we have scientific data showing that plants in the environment give us improved health. That's true inside of buildings and outside of buildings. Groundwater recharge. These plants kind of help hold water and be able to keep it in place instead of going down the storm drain. Carbon sequestration is the next one here on the list. That's a really important one these days. We talk about climate change. We want to pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and put it in the soil. And that's something that plants can do. And turf grass is especially efficient at this. If you look at the typical urban landscape, there's usually twice as much organic matter in the turf grass areas than there are in other places in the landscape. A tree shrub synergy can be beneficial to having some grass in the landscape. Participant safety, having a healthy grass can be a safe space to play versus playing on concrete or asphalt. Community pride, social harmony. We actually have data showing that communities that have plants in the landscape have better social harmony, believe it or not. Property values, as I mentioned previously. Physical health can be improved as we play sports and we tend to go outside and play on these grassed areas. Quality of life is better in these kind of communities that have grassed landscapes. Entertainment, recreation, aesthetics, again, and the economy. These are big industries that employ a lot of folks. Now let's switch over here to the right side. Things that are reduced: dust pollution, noise pollution, glare, crime. Can you believe there's actually data that shows that communities that have plants in the environment have less crime, less graffiti, believe it or not. Erosion is greatly controlled when we have vegetated plants, and soil erosion is a big deal. We do not want soil to be lost. We want to keep it in place, and plants, and turf grass is especially good at it, is good at preventing soil erosion from wind and water. Allergens are reduced with grass. Littering can be reduced. Again, data showing that in communities that have plants, we tend to have less littering. People are less likely to throw their trash on the ground. Interesting. Less flooding. Again, absorbing the water into the ground, we get less flooding. We have less heat in the urban landscape when we have plants, and grass is particularly good at that too. We have reduced air pollutants, reduced wildfire hazard when we have mowed grass that's watered. We also can have a reduction in nuisance animals, reductions in chemical leaching. We have reductions in habitat degradation, and playing surface costs are reduced when we have good, healthy turf grass. So a bunch of reasons why we should maybe think about that. So again, are there problems? Yes. Do we need to conserve water? Yes. One way of doing that is reducing, not eliminating, but reducing the amount of turf grass. I recently took out the parking strips at my house. That grass really didn't have any functionality. So now I don't have to mow those areas. I put in a droughtscape, is what I like to call it, out there. It looks good. And I reduced my turf grass footprint, so to speak. Can I fertilize and water correctly the grass that I do have? Yes. Can I recycle my grass clippings in place and not send them to the landfill? Yes. Can I reduce the amount of pesticides that I use? In fact, if I have less grass and more other plants, we actually reduce the pesticide need in the landscape. And so I should do that and practice integrated pest management. So all of these things we're concerned about, we can minimize and still have grass. And certainly we want plants in the environment. I don't like xeriscapes. They're all rocks. If I live in a community that has very little water that I just can't irrigate and grass is not a possibility, I still want to find some kind of plants to help shade my home, to help do some of these things that I've talked about today. So it's important to try to find the right balance. Thank you.